There are many different kinds of animal mummies because, of course, if you love your pet and it died, you would mummify it and place it in a tomb. Then we also have basically which are sacred animals. The idea is that each god has a totemic animal, and sometimes the god would appear on earth in animal form. And the most common form of animal mummies that we see are votive offerings, and these are offerings that pilgrims would give to the god of their choice.
About 70 million animal mummies have been found so far. Yet 1/3 of these mummies do not contain complete animal bodies. Apparently, at that time, the demand is so great that embalmers help themselves with filling materials to produce several mummies from one animal corpse. Usually, animal mummies are offered as sacrifices in temples and rarely buried with the deceased, who, after embalming, are taken to their final resting place in a procession, accompanied by priests, the bereaved, and professional mourners. Furniture, cult objects, jewelry, mummified pets, and even meals are brought along in the funeral procession. The deceased should want for nothing in the afterlife. Arriving at the grave, the ritual for revival begins. A formula addresses the bodily functions. Open your nose so that you may breathe. Open your eyes that you may see. Open your mouth that you may eat. A ritual to which the ushepti may also be subjected. The statuettes are supposed to serve as doubles for the deceased in the afterlife, taking care of unpleasant tasks. Provided that the deceased gets there, since first he must pass several tests, which are recorded in guides for the underworld.
The pyramid texts become, the coffin texts of the Middle Kingdom, which are on the inside coffins of many noble people, and they become the Book of the Dead, which are various versions of the journey through the afterlife. But by the late period, many very rather common low status burials had a Book of the Dead of sorts, or parts of the books of the afterlife, the Book of the Underworld, the Book of Gates. They had some versions of these, formerly exclusively royal texts, now just buried with a common mummy.
Unlike Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, life in the hereafter does not last forever for the ancient Egyptians. The Book of the Dead also contains spells that ensure survival in the afterlife, such as the one intended to keep the body from decaying in the realm of the dead.
The Book of the Dead was a guide to the afterlife, describing in great detail what you might experience there. It was important that you could take such a book with you into your grave, since, as the Egyptians believed, the moment something was written down and you carried it with you, it was translated into reality. So even if you were a little bit uncertain, you would know how to behave correctly, since you had the Book of the Dead at hand and thus could live on.
The Book of the Dead also explains why the Egyptians leave the heart in the body during mummification. Before entering paradise, the purity of the heart must be tested using the scales of the soul. To that end, Anubis leads the deceased into the Hall of the Last Truth. Here, the court of the dead meets under the direction of Osiris, the god of the dead.
The soul scales are an essential tool at the court of the dead. People had to prove that they had lived according to Ma'at, that they had followed the ethical standards prescribed to them. There were clear rules which called for a so-called negative confession of sin. It describes exactly what you were not allowed to do.
42 deities sit as judges in the court of the dead. Each tests the deceased for a sin, be it lying, adultery, or murder, yet also rioting and destroying food. If the deceased confirms no sins have been committed, his heart is weighed against the pen of the goddess Ma'at. If its weight is greater, it's full of sin and gulped down by the great devourer, Amit. Then the soul will be doomed for eternity. If the scales remain in the balance, the test is considered passed. The deceased may go on to paradise. A conception that's found in Christianity too, where the Archangel Michael weighs the fate of the deceased with his soul scales. The soul scales represent the striving of the ancient Egyptians to keep everything in balance.
Known to be very accurate, the map was made for one specific quarrying expedition. When 8,000 men were sent into a desert valley 130 kilometres from Thebes to mine stone for royal monuments. But what's special about this map is that it leads us to the ordinary people who were employed by the pharaoh to build the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. It was discovered by archaeologists at the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, a purpose-built settlement to house the tomb builders, architects, artists and scribes, together with their families. This would have been a bustling place, its streets full of children playing, deliveries being made, and all the colours, sounds and smells of everyday life. It's one of the workers who lived here who made the map.
Now we even know the identity of the map maker, the scribe Amennacht. His distinctive handwriting is well known from a range of other literary works, from poems to prayers, maps to tomb plans. And it's thanks to one particular little inscription with his name on that we even know where he lived. Amennacht lived here. This is the scribe's house.
Amennacht was one of the many skilled workers that rose through the ranks of society in the generations following the reign of Amenhotep III.
He became the head scribe of this entire village, so a very, very important man. And yet it's a very sad tale as well, because as he gets older, we know that his eyesight started to fail, because a prayer of his has survived in which he makes this very personal address to the local goddess Meret Sega, who lived at the top of the mountain up there. And he's imploring the goddess. He's saying, my eyesight is failing. I see darkness by day. And for a scribe, for a consummate draftsman like Amennacht, how sad that would have been.
Here Amennacht prays to Meret Sega, both of them symbolically portrayed without their eyes.
It's hard not to resist this image that as he got older and more infirm, he would have gone up the steps to the flat roof and with failing eyesight try to focus on the job in hand, trying to mix his paints, apply the lines and the words and so forth, and needing the full sun on a day like this just to get through the working day.
But just like his predecessors who built the pyramids, Amennacht would have felt a sense of greater purpose. We can imagine him and his neighbours in Deir el-Medina working towards a single aim, creating the royal tomb.
The New Kingdom pharaohs had created a new image for themselves, elaborate building schemes requiring new towns full of workers, a strong economy supporting an ever grander vision, both for this world and the next.
But the spiritual convictions that had brought Egypt to its zenith had also created a serious threat. In the New Kingdom, much of the Egyptian state centred on Thebes. While its West Bank was mainly dedicated to its city of the dead, the East Bank was where most people lived and the site of Egypt's main state temple, Karnak. As Karnak was rapidly becoming the largest religious complex of the ancient world, its influence grew exponentially. And likewise, the power of its priests.
To get a real sense of what's going on, we need to go behind the scenes.
I'm being allowed through an ancient passageway, once only accessible to Karnak's clergy.
From the top, more wonderful sign.
It leads to the top of the temple's main gateway and gives a view of Karnak not many get to see.
Just look at that. You could fit Notre Dame and St. Paul's cathedrals in here and still have acres to spare. It is immense.
Within Karnak, a series of chapels, shrines and sacred precincts covered a total area of more than 250 acres. This was Egypt's religious heart for almost 2,000 years.
The reason why Karnak is so vast is that every pharaoh poured so much of their wealth into this temple. Their gold and their spoils of war all filled the temple's coffers. And each pharaoh also wanted to build their own halls, shrines and obelisks in an attempt to outdo their predecessors, and yet all to the greater glory of Karnak's chief god, Amun.
Over the course of centuries, Amun had risen from a local Theban god to Egypt's state deity. And his worship was the engine that fueled the nation. So every pharaoh had to keep Amun content, offering him their wealth and tending to his every need. And this privilege fell to Karnak's high priest and was performed in the temple's inner sanctum. Secret ceremonies at which the only others permitted were the royals.
Here we are, in the very heart of Karnak Temple. This is where the god lived. The god himself lived inside his sacred statue. The original wouldn't have been much bigger than this, would have been solid gold. It would have lived inside a little golden shrine, sealed by a pair of small doors. Each morning the high priest would come in. He would awaken the god's spirit. He would greet him, he would wash him, anoint him with perfume, apply his eye makeup, and then dress him in various linen outfits, apply the small pieces of jewellery to the god's statue, and then the god would proceed to enjoy his day.
Amun received daily meals of the finest foods, roast meats, bread, fruit and vegetables, accompanied by wine and beer. Clouds of incense would drive away evil forces, and musicians and dancers entertained him. And by keeping their most important deity content, it was believed that Amun would in turn make the Nile flood each year, make the sun rise each morning, and maintain Egypt's supreme status. The high priest's direct access to Amun made them the greatest beneficiaries of Karnak's growing prosperity. This tranquil lake is where the male and female clergy bathed twice each day and night to maintain their ritual purity before the gods. Known as the Pure Ones, they set themselves apart from the rest of society with their distinctive appearance achieved through their own set of daily rituals.